Welcome, and we're glad you're here. This is our Tuesday night podcast, and tonight is going to be a little different. My name is Jordan. I will be hosting tonight, as always. And tonight, Pastor Ford is out of town, so we are going to do something a little different. We're going to try and work it out to where he could do this remotely, but we decided that this would be a better direction to go. And so joining me tonight is my tested and faithful and beautiful wife, Clarissa, who can say hi now.
Hi, hello.
You guys will have to bear with me as I do some of the transition stuff here. Usually Pastor Ford's working this out while I'm talking, so just bear with us. If you guys see any problems or anything like that, you guys can feel free to throw it in the chat, or anybody who has my phone number can text me. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about freedom from addiction, and I realize that a lot of people might not be addicted to anything. And one of the things I was going to do in this is honestly give credit where credit is due. We're going to show a video here in a second. It's the video clip from our conference video this year where I had an opportunity to give a testimony of how I met Jesus in the midst of a crazy addiction and was almost lost my entire family because I was an idiot and got caught in a lot of crazy situations and really put a lot of people in some crazy situations. And I was able to share how Jesus genuinely set me free from that addiction, restored my wife and family and our relationship, my marriage, restored my mind, restored my place as a disciple and a Christian. And I had a lot of people come up to me after that video and thank me for being bold and stepping out and sharing this kind of stuff. And I really have to say that I really don't deserve credit in this, and so we're going to show that in a second. But what we're going to focus on tonight is kind of twofold. One is we're going to talk about addiction and just the realities of addiction from my experience, and I can't necessarily vouch for everybody else that's gone through something similar, but I can tell you from my experience what I've seen, what God showed me through the whole thing in hindsight. And the other direction that we're going, the other fold is from the perspective of people dealing with someone who's addicted. And so this really is for everyone. If you're a Christian and you evangelize and you want to help people, open your ears and open your heart. Let God give you strategy for people. If you know somebody who's dealing with any kind of addiction, whether it's drugs or alcohol or gambling or pornography, anything like that, these are all the same. They all work the same. It's an issue of the mind, and more often than not, it's something that's very secretive, and it's a place that a lot of people don't want to shed light on. And I want to help you tonight. And so our aim tonight is to give you a strategy, not only in working with people, but give hope to people who might be dealing with this themselves. And so we're going to get started. I'm going to play this video clip. It's about a little over 2 minutes long, but I hope you guys enjoy. I grew up in church. I really wanted to be a pastor, but the way that I saw calling, my destiny, nobody's going to get in the way of it, even if it's God. I didn't have personal conviction. I didn't have a reading life or study life. We had an opportunity to take over the church in San Mateo, but still I had these underlying problems. Even when we took over the church, before I knew it, I was spending thousands of dollars on drugs, lying, stealing, trying to wean myself off.
At first, I was super angry. He's got 4 little girls. I want my home to be like how it was when I grew up.
In my mind, I was like, it's over. I've blown it for sure. Our marriage is done. I'm going to lose my kids. I'm definitely not going back to church. I'm not ever going to be a preacher. I'm not ever going to be saved again. This is a beeline for hell. She kept telling me, no, we can work this out. I want to help you. My dad wants to help you. I remember calling him and I just said, look, I can't do this. I don't see how I'm going to stop doing drugs. Pastor Ford said, start reading the Bible in the book of John. And he said, just start like a new convert. And before you read your Bible, pray. I think it was 2 days after I had been in this rehab, I opened up the Bible and started reading the book of John. And the question was in my mind, I'm not born again. I've never been born again. I'm weeping, but I genuinely met Jesus in that room. And Jesus said, if you surrender everything to me, I will change you. And
and you'll be born again. And there was I'd never had that moment before.
When I first saw him when he came out of the rehab, I didn't know what I was looking for, if I would see.
I grew up in church. I really wanted to be a pastor, but the way that I saw calling, my destiny, nobody's gonna get in the way of it, even if it's God. I didn't have personal conviction. I didn't have a reading life or study life. We had an opportunity to take over the church in San Mateo, but still I had these underlying problems. Even when we took over the church, before I knew it, I was spending thousands of dollars on drugs, lying and stealing, trying to wean myself off.
At first, I was super angry. He's got 4 little girls. I want my home to be like how it was when I grew up.
In my mind, I was like, it's over. I've blown it for sure. Our marriage is done. I'm gonna lose my kids. I'm definitely not going back to church. I'm not ever going to be a preacher. I'm not ever going to be saved again. This is a beeline for hell. She kept telling me, no, we can work this out. I want to help you. My dad wants to help you. I remember calling him and I just said, look, I can't do this. I don't see how I'm going to stop doing drugs. Pastor Ford said, start reading the Bible in the book of John. And he said, just start like a new convert. And before you read your Bible, pray. I think it was 2 days after I had been in this rehab, I opened up the Bible and started reading in the book of John. And the question was in my mind, I'm not born again. I've never been born again. I'm weeping, but I genuinely met Jesus in that room. And Jesus said, if you surrender everything to me, I will change you and you'll be born again. And there was I'd never had that moment before.
When I first saw him when he came out of the rehab, I didn't know what I was looking for, if I would see that he has changed or what. Little by little, that consistency, seeing him make right decisions, seeing him admit when he was wrong, seeing him study his Bible on his own. He was just studying just to study. And so I saw a lot of little changes like that made me realize this is deeper.
When I met Jesus, nothing else mattered. It's like, man, when you meet Jesus, this stuff won't matter. You will want to stop doing what you're doing. You will want to go to church. You will want to read your Bible. You will want to pray, because all of those things encompass who Jesus is.
Okay, sorry about that. That was a slip of the finger. Okay, so we wanted to show that. Actually, that was Pastor Ford's idea, and I thought it was awesome idea because it really does just summarize sort of it gives you like a brief description of everything that kind of happened. But I really do want to, like I said, not only help people who might be addicted, but also help people who might be working or dealing with people who are addicted. Because the bottom line is, I could not have experienced anything I've experienced if it weren't for other people. And I remember the first conference after this whole thing went down. I remember there being a moment during the conference that Pastor Warner had preached a sermon called The Band of Brothers. And I'll probably never forget this sermon because the timing of all of it and the sermon, the premise of the sermon was this need for other people, this need for other people to jump in and fight when alongside you. And at the end, he made this strong point about people who fight when other people can't. And I remember I turned to Pastor Ford afterwards, my pastor, and I said, I really do appreciate you stepping in and fighting when I couldn't. Because the bottom line is, I personally had completely given up. I'd quit. And in the true sense of the term, I'd quit. I had stopped fighting. I didn't want to go forward anymore. I didn't want to be a husband. I didn't want to be a father. It's not that I didn't want these things from a desire standpoint. I just didn't want to fight for them anymore. I didn't see any hope. And there was a moment that Pastor Ford came over my house, and I was, had pretty driven in the wrong direction. My wife had left the house. She was living with her parents at the time. I wasn't with my kids for a long period of time, and I was okay with that. I wanted them to go. I didn't want to be around them anymore. I didn't see any way that this was going to work anymore. And Pastor Ford came over my house, and he he gave me this ultimatum. And it wasn't this ultimatum like, either do or die. It was more like, I want to help you, but I can't unless you want the help. I will help you. I will do everything in my power. He actually said it just like that. I'll do everything in my power to help you. He said, but if you don't want help, I will do everything in my power to make sure that your kids don't see you like this. And so either way, he was going to help somebody in the situation, but he was only going to help people who wanted the help. And the reason why it's appropriate for my wife to be here is because she was the one dealing with this, a lot more from a distance, but here she is as a mother of 4 kids. She's been a faithful wife, and she, for all intents and purposes, has done everything right. She hasn't, pushed me in this direction. It wasn't like we had some kind of conflict in our marriage that I could blame for this. This was all me. And my wife had played her part faithfully the entire time. And so here we are, we're at this place. I have this decision to make, but she has no idea what direction this is going to go. And so I'm going to ask her some questions, and we're going to weigh in on this together. But I'm going to ask her some questions, and she's going to have the freedom to be able to chime in and comments. And on that note, anybody that has questions for either one of us, I do ask tonight that you keep things on this topic. And so if you have questions related to the situation we're talking about, or you have questions about people you're dealing with, that's the kind of questions we want. Don't just ask questions for the sake of asking questions. And we can continue that thread in the coming podcasts of open forum and stuff like that. But tonight's a little bit more focused, and so feel free to ask questions as always. But let's keep them on topic. So I want to ask you. So why don't you just talk about how this all came to light? Like, things are kind of shaky anyway. Something's up. But when was the moment? Tell us about the moment where you found out that I was actually doing drugs.
From what I remember things were just really rocky at home. Like, we were fighting a lot. I clearly remember not knowing what was up. But I knew something was wrong. I couldn't seem to get through to you. And I do remember before this, there were times off and on that you had told me you maybe had a procedure, and you told me I've been a little bit irresponsible with how many of these meds I've been taking. I don't know if you remember that, but then it seemed to kind of go away or whatever. But we fought a lot. There was a lot, and I remember talking to my dad a lot by being something's. He doesn't want to do anything for God. There's no God in our home. There's no be feeling really frustrated. I don't know what the deal is. And I remember praying and actually writing down at the time back a few years ago, I had made these prayer goals list for me and some of my friends as a Christmas present. And I made one for myself, and I wrote down and actually found it a couple of weeks ago. I actually came across it, and it said, God, help Jordan to be the man that you want him to be. Do whatever you need to do to make that happen. And that was before it was official. So the moment that it was okay, this is all out, was when there was a lot of money disappearing, and you said you were doing a lot of side jobs, and then you were gone a lot, and you were saying that you were out to the gym, going to the gym at 4 a.m, or that you just couldn't sleep, or you're going to prayer. There was all those different excuses. And then late one night, it was after church, and you had gone to do a side job, I think. And we got into an argument on the phone about more money disappearing. And then I was like, what is going on? This, you can't just keep, saying you're just going to spend all this money on materials, but we're not getting paid back for it. And then it was something happened that you're just I've been lying. I'm on drugs. And you were on the other side of the bay at the time we were on the phone. And that's when it all started just coming out, that you were on drugs, that this money hasn't been being used for materials. And
how did you feel at that moment? What was your initial response? Not the emotions, but what were your thoughts?
Honestly, my first thought was, okay, it's coming out. I knew something was up. And so it was okay, the truth is being told finally.
Yeah. So one of the things that that I wanted to point out in this situation is the issue of exposure. And one of the problems with addictions is that because it's such a big deal, and the bottom line is anybody who's addicted knows that if there are people who don't know they're addicted, that when they find out, it's going to be chaotic. There's going to be shame. There's going to be broken hearts. There's going to be total disappointments, maybe even the threat of your marriage or relationships or jobs being destroyed. And, there's so much that I believe the devil uses against people who are addicted. And so you have this mindset that says, if I let anybody find out, then everything is going to go broke. Everything's going to break. Everything's going to be destroyed. And so they keep it inside. And honestly, this moment when everything came out was totally the hand of God. God knew, he, obviously listening to the prayers of other people for my life, because things definitely weren't right. But this moment was a godsend. God literally got involved. This has to be exposed. It cannot stay a secret. And when I was putting together thoughts for this podcast, I was reminded of a scripture, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in Luke 8, verse 26 through 29 or 39, you can go and read that for yourself. And I really do encourage you to read it, because I'm going to pull from it a bit during this next 45 minutes to an hour here. But Jesus comes to an area called Gadara, and he comes out, and this man who the Bible says was demon possessed and lived in the tombs comes rushing out to him. And so there's this moment where this man meets Jesus, right? And he's obviously demon possessed. It's very obvious, but this is like it's a moment where Jesus comes in contact with somebody who desperately needs help. And when you go into the scripture, you see that, men had tried to bind him with chains and fetters, and he would break these things loose. And the Bible says that this demon spirit led him into the wilderness. And so he's off by himself. He's in the wilderness where there's no civilization. There's not any help for him. Nobody's going to come and find him. He's out by himself. And this is where a lot of drug addicts live. The Bible says he's living in tombs. Men who are addicted, or women who are addicted in secret, whether it be, like I said, drugs or pornography or alcohol. You live in a place that's dark and where there's no life. And you live in the middle of the wilderness. And there is no help for you outside of a total miracle. And that was the miracle moment for me. It was a moment where everything got exposed, and now it was like decisions can be made. Other people can get involved. People who can physically see me can get involved. And so what was like the first thing you did when this all came out? Like I basically had told you at that point, I'm done being a Christian. I'm not gonna I actually remember the phone call, and I think I sent your dad a text and said, I'm done with this whole thing. I'm gone. And so I had made this decision. I'm just done. But what did you do? What was like your first decision after that?
Well, there was, from that phone call that night, there was a little bit of, like you said, that decision back and forth, because then you did go to church like the next service, or I can't really remember the timing of it, but
just talk about more what you did. What did you do after that point?
Immediately,
yeah, like what was what you did?
Called my dad.
Okay, yeah, you got help.
Yeah,
right? So that's the point I'm trying to make, and that's everything. So you got help. The whole point of this podcast tonight is addicted people cannot get free on their own. I don't know if that's the rule, but it's definitely, I don't know if that's the exception. I don't know if there's an exception for people, but I do know that that's the rule. I don't know about everybody's case. Maybe some people have just been able to get themselves off of some crazy addiction like this, but the majority of the time, anybody who's addicted desperately needs help. I remember I'm in my house all by myself. Pastor Ford is calling me. My wife is calling me. Everybody's telling me. I remember another pastor from another city, James Wilkins, calls me up. He found out what was happening. He gives me a call. I don't even have a relationship with James Wilkins, but he calls me up and he says, listen, man, anything you need. He says, I know you have a pastor. He says, but you cannot do this on your own. He said, you need help. He said, you desperately need help. Don't stay by yourself. Don't try to do this on your own. And the truth is, that's true, because for years, I've been trying to work it out on my own, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. Just like this demoniac, this man who's demon-possessed, he's gone so far as to just live in tombs, which is nutty. That's just crazy if you think about it. Who wants to live in a tomb with a bunch of dead people? But he had driven himself so far away from civilization and help that now he's living in a total place of death. And so this where my pastor and my wife began to get involved was everything. And it wasn't just everything for me, it was everything for my wife. So what did your dad, how was your dad's response? What did he say to all that? What was like his initial reply?
I mean, for me, I don't know, because I was dealing with a lot, like not only like what exactly is going on, how far is this, and figuring all that out. And that's what I was talking about before. Like there was that initial like admission that you said, but then we didn't realize how deep and how bad it actually was until like a few events later. But through it all, like my dad was just there. Like he was ready to call people, get help from other people to find out what do we do here. Like once we found out how bad it actually was, he was reaching out to other pastors who've had experience with this, other churches who have like rehab programs and stuff. And he was reaching out to try to find help, and then to basically like looking into all his resources. And then for me, it was he basically just told me like, we just still gotta do what God's called us to do. Like, I remember once being at service, I think you had left, and the whole mess. My dad was like, you have to still get up there and play song service. Like, this is what we do. We do what God wants us to do, and we continue doing it. We don't let this craziness just like stop us in our tracks and just throw us off rails. We have to just keep going through. And he was very much like a solid guide through this whole time, because my emotions were everywhere. I was angry, hurt, broken, scared for the future. Like, I mean, I was a mess. And my dad was like, well, you can't always choose the cards you're dealt, but you can choose how you play them. And it was like, okay, what are you going to do for me? Like when he was dealing with me, it was like, what are you going to do? Are you going to just lose your mind as well? Or are you going to stay solid? And that really helped to have that like guide.
Yeah. So was that easy?
Was it easy to do?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Was it easy working with me? Was I responding well?
No.
How was I responding?
You were very, I do remember a couple of times I was just so infuriated and frustrated at you because I just couldn't seem to like talk any sense to you. I remember slapping you once, trying to get through to you, like just whoosh, across the face. I remember when we were talking once, just like stopping and just praying in the middle of our conversation because I didn't know what else to do or what else to say. And I was just like, God, you have to get in control here. I don't know what to do. It was very, and then it, like, I don't know how far you want me to go in talking about this, but like before you're in the rehab or after the rehab, like,
no, this is all just kind of, we're working through the initial process here.
Okay. So the initial, because the process after took a while.
We'll work through some stuff.
But that initial process was very infuriating and very frustrating because we knew that with the drugs still in your body, there was no way to talk sense to you. It was like there was just a wall there.
So did I just stop doing drugs like right when I told you that was happening?
No.
And so I stayed on them?
Yeah.
So you were working through quite a bit before any kind of direction came. You just like working through things as they came, day at a time type of thing. Yeah. Yeah, we tried different things. We tried to have some of the guys from church come and spend the night with you. They blocked you in so that you couldn't leave. They tried to hide your car keys. Yeah. The reason why I'm asking these specific questions is because this is the reality of working with people. Whether it's somebody addicted or you're trying to see somebody saved. This is really what it takes. And my question is why did you keep going? Why didn't you just like Jordan, just go do your thing? I'm gonna you're a nurse, you're a registered nurse who, by the way, can make a lot of money, and so she could very easily just be a working mother and work through these things, go start working full time and support her family, probably live fairly well off. You know what I mean? There's obviously all kinds of other factors there, having to find babysitters and stuff like that. But the bottom line is it can be done. And especially if you have people like her father and her mother who could, help her along the way, help her to get onto her feet by herself. This very easily could have happened. So why did you do that?
Why didn't I just quit?
Yeah.
Because.
Why didn't you just let me do what I was going to do?
Because we don't just give up on people. Like we've been raised to not just give up on people,
Because you want to?
No, I didn't actually.
Why not? Like, why specifically? Was that where you just thinking like we just don't give up on people? I'm just gonna
No, it was like a desperation thing. It's like I love this man. We built a life.
I was hoping you'd say that.
I mean, I did, and we built a life together. We have daughters together,
Yeah.
and God was definitely working in our lives. God, I know I saw the potential in you, and I wanted to be a part of that. That's why I married you in the first place, is because I was attracted to the hand that God had on your life,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we don't just, when situations get hard, just walk away.
Yeah.
And, obviously the way I've been raised was really implanted that, because, I saw all kinds of situations growing up, and we didn't just anytime somebody struggled, it was just like, peace out, you figure this out on your own. It was it wasn't even a question in my mind. I mean, obviously the thoughts came in my mind of, what if this doesn't work out?
Yeah.
What if he doesn't change?
Yeah, yeah.
What am I going to do? But initially it wasn't even a thought. I mean, I remember talking to a lady in the Tucson church. When I went to Tucson, when you were in the rehab, I talked to a lady who had experience in the past with this with her husband. And she ended up having to leave him for years, and they even got divorced and everything, and then got remarried. God did such a miracle in their lives. But I remember talking to her thinking, God, I don't want that to be me. I don't want it to drag on that long. I don't want us to have to get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
I was desperate.
So what did, as things kind of things kind of started unfolding as far as decisions being made and stuff like that, what were some of the steps you guys took, you and your dad, to try and solve the problem and deal with the issue?
Well, initially we did stuff we took your phone,
Mm-hmm.
remember, and we're tracking all your communication, and we were doing stuff to try to break in to your mind, into your life, and try to put it, try to stop before it went on. I mentioned having the guys come over. We had the guys, I don't remember whose idea that was. Maybe it was probably my dad's.
It was your dad's.
Yeah, just to have them come and block you in. We were just doing stuff, just doing anything. Like I said as well, my dad was calling other pastors and stuff. We were just doing stuff to try to just figure this out. Where do we go from there? And then through doing extensive research about what drugs do to a person, especially on somebody, when we started realizing how much you were on, my dad especially was doing so much research about all into it. And he was like, before anything can happen, these drugs have to get out of his mind first. And so we tried doing it just, with having but the guys had to go to work, they couldn't watch you, babysit you all day long, and you weren't able to just withdraw on your own. So we were like, he has to get into a rehab. And so we started all the phone calls and stuff to get you into a rehab.
So I remember, I mentioned this, but Pastor Ford came over to my house. It was during this time. So you were living with your parents at the point. Yeah, though you kind of
Staying with them, yeah.
Stay with your parents. And so for a couple of weeks, Clarissa was just living at her parents' house, and I was by myself a lot of the time. And I remember, like I said, there was one day, I think it was a Saturday. Yeah, it was a Saturday. Pastor Ford comes over to my house, and he knocks on my door. I totally didn't expect him to come. He just showed up, and he just walked right in and sat down on my couch, and he looked at me. And this will forever be in my mind, because it was the first time in a long time that I felt like I had an opportunity for help. And honestly, I'm being honest. I didn't feel like there was any hope, and I don't mean that to sound cliche, but I would venture to say that that's where a lot of addicts live. They live there's just no hope. It's not possible. They've tried many different things. Like I said, this guy, this demoniac had been bound with chains and broke through them. The bottom line is, man-made devices or strategies can't help. It takes somebody like Jesus, who has dominion over the spiritual world, to come in and interrupt everything. And that's what my pastor did. He came over, and he's a man with dominion. And he came in like a man with dominion. And he said, I have the ability to help you either way. He said, I can help you by helping your wife and kids, and you can just go off and do your thing, or I can help you by helping you. And he said, I'm not going to let the devil just rob this. And so you think about this whole scenario. I can now honestly say I've been in a rehab and have seen people in similar situations with still no hope. They're in a rehab. They still have no hope, no dominion, no deliverance. And this is how far the world can take addicts. They can take them to a point where at least they're like guarded on all sides at all times. They're bound, like a bondage that does not equal a bondage, but it keeps them away from drugs. It's almost like just a bondage traded for another bondage. Whereas in this situation, Pastor Ford was giving me an opportunity to experience genuine deliverance. And I felt that. I felt all of a sudden, instead of my mind being in this dark place where I saw no hope, all of a sudden it was like my mind was divided. And I felt an option to go down this road and destroy my life more than I already had. But then there was this other one that was like, it was like God just like separated the human and moved this it was like a genuine like vision of no more demons. I felt it. It was conscious. And I'm sitting there looking at my pastor, and I probably had like a total attitude face and looked like a rebel, but inside I was so broken and so open to what he was saying. And I don't know how Pastor felt in that moment. I don't know if he, looked at me and thought, he's getting it. I don't know if he thought, okay, there was a moment there, a sober moment. All I know is that he had dominion and I didn't. And he was offering me dominion. He was offering me a deliverance that couldn't have come from anywhere else. And so here's this demoniac who meets Jesus, and the first thing Jesus does is divide the man and the demon. And that was a moment. It was a moment. And an addict cannot be free until that moment has happened. And, the bottom line is the only thing I did in this entire scenario, the only thing I did was when Pastor Ford left, he said, call me if you need help. And he said, I can't help you unless you want it. And so he left. I'm in my house. I'm being driven nuts. All I can think about is drugs. That's all I can think about. That's all I could think about. And then there would be these little spurts of moment where I'd think about what Pastor Ford said. I could be free. He can help me. And so I remember I called him up and I said, I can't do this. All I think about is drugs. All I keep thinking about is going to get more drugs. I don't want to be like this anymore. I need help. And Pastor Ford said, okay. And I'm telling you right now, I felt like somebody took the reins and was now steering the car that I was about to crash. It was totally, it was freeing. I was already covered in shame. I had already exposed, everything's already exposed. It was like, I have a direction now. I have somebody who can help me. I felt like somebody had started driving. And Pastor Ford took the reins and started saying, we're going to get you help. We're going to get you into rehab. I've been doing a ton of research. We just need to try and get the drugs out of you so that you can start making conscious decisions and good decisions. And so, for me, that's what was necessary. And you can't necessarily, cookie cut everything. I don't know every situation. The bottom line is that there are certain principles in this whole scenario that you can take home. One is you can't do this on your own. Even the people working with addicts, you can't do it on your own. You need help. Pastors, people in the church, people who have, like I said, that level of dominion already. They have spiritual dominion. That is totally necessary. Jesus was obviously a man with spiritual dominion. And he came and he said, come out of the man. And so he took control. This man couldn't have done that on his own. Jesus did it. And so this scenario played out because somebody else got in the ring and began to fight. And so I went to this rehab, and again, this was just, the whole purpose of this was like a 10-day stretch of time where I couldn't contact anybody. I couldn't get on the phone. I didn't really even have access to money. I didn't have there were a bunch of other people in there who were all going through the same 60-something meetings in 10 days. It was insanity. But I was able to think with a sober mind, and it had been a long time since that happened. And so, what did you feel? Where was the moment that you started feeling like there was hope for me? Like genuine, like you're like, yes, there's hope.
When I think it was like a few days later, you started admitting random things to me that you definitely didn't have to admit, but you started like exposing yourself about other.
A few days later.
After you got out of the rehab.
Okay.
So you got out of the rehab, and I remember like looking at you coming in, and I looked at my dad, and my dad was kind of like we'll see,
Yeah.
we'll see. Time will tell. And then when you started just telling me about stuff, just confessing other stuff that you didn't have to. And I started realizing that's when I first started feeling the glimmer of hope. And it wasn't suddenly you're free, we can just live happily ever after now. It was kind of it took a long time, for everything to kind of be rebuilt. And I had to deal with a lot of stuff in myself as well. But that first, you're asking, that first glimmer of kind of hope was when I realized that you wanted this as well, that it wasn't just us forcing it on you. And I could tell that you wanted it because you started dealing with other past stuff that you didn't need to bring to the table. It could have just stayed hidden back there. But the fact that you brought it to the table, told us about it, it was okay, he does want this.
Yeah. So what did, what was, when I was in the rehab, what were things that you did? Obviously, like I said, we couldn't contact each other where, it wasn't like we were just on the phone every day. She had no idea the things I was, thinking or doing or anything like that in the rehab. If I was responding to what was going on in the rehab, if I was thinking in a good direction, bad direction, what were you thinking? What were you going through during the time I was in the rehab?
I ran away. I ran away to Tucson to stay with my sister and just get some reprieve. Really, went with my mom and just was God, it's in your hands. I don't know what to do. I don't know how this is going to turn out. And I had no idea.
Mm-hmm. So what did you guys do, as far as, what were some of the practical applications that you guys made to me? Even after the rehab, what were some of the things that you guys established? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Practical things that we put into place. Mm-hmm. We put a tracker on your phone so that we could see, because, we needed to rebuild. I needed to rebuild that trust in you. We put a tracker on your phone, and I changed all your passwords so you couldn't go in and turn off the tracker. We changed all your passwords to everything. And I had the passwords. We took away your any ability to have access to money. I changed all the accounts. I took you off the bank accounts. What else did we do?
I'm asking you the questions. You got to answer.
I think that was the major things. Yeah. As far as just, making sure that I knew what you were doing and what you were spending money on, so that there was no question.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this when I was putting these thoughts together, but I was thinking about how one of the hard things to do is obviously to confess this stuff, but as you start working through it, when you do something like this, you burn every bridge of anybody and anybody you're involved with closely. And so I had burnt so many bridges, with my wife, with my pastor, with my boss, friends. My testimony was completely blown, and I didn't really even have much of a testimony. I can call it that, but whatever testimony I thought I did have for Jesus Christ was totally gone. And so when I got out of the rehab, it was almost like I had this clean slate. And I'm saying that on purpose because I know one of the things that's hard for people, and I've seen this happen from now in other people as well. I've seen it happen where you get in a position like this, okay, I need help, we do it, and then you start moving forward and people are trying to help you. But then when they start trying to remove things from you, there's this pride that rises up. You're like, no, I should be able to spend money, and I should be able to go where I want and do what I want, and putting a tracker on my phone, what kind of craziness is that? I have my own privacy and stuff like that. And honestly, when I got out of the rehab, because of what I'd experienced with Jesus in the rehab, and we'll talk about that in a second, but because of that, I was so okay with it. And honestly, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like it just flowed from me. I was just like, yep, no problem. It wasn't like that. It was hard. It was genuinely hard to have every move I made watched, and every word I said I was accountable for, and think I would say something or do something that might have got misunderstood, or I didn't say it the right way or something like that. And it was like my wife and even sometimes Pastor Ford called me up, hey, what's up? What's the deal with this? And there were conversations, there were tough conversations and tough moments that we just had to work through. So it wasn't like I got out of the rehab and it was just like, boom, everything's awesome. It took a long time. And so you're talking about like a year and a half before I even had my own card again, my own debit card or credit card or whatever. And, I still to this day have a tracker on my phone. My wife I don't have any passwords that she doesn't know, but I do have passwords that I have access to. We've been able to rebuild this stuff. I've been given levels of ministry that I definitely wouldn't have been given after the rehab. And, although I was allowed to be involved in things that were happening in the church, nothing was in leadership. And so you're talking about years of being in a leadership position, being able to do things in the church, having a level of liberty and to just having nothing but things I was being told to do. And that was tough. That was really hard. But the bottom line is I wanted to be right with God and I wanted to be right with people. And there was something about knowing that I was right with God that made me okay with what people were saying about me and thinking about me, because it was like, if I'm doing the right thing consciously, if I have a clear conscience about this, then God will show. And God was totally involved in this whole thing. But the thing I want to point out is that I had people who cared about me watching over my life and helping me and training me back into a right mind and helping me to make conscious decisions. Hey, listen, that decision might have been okay, if you hadn't been addicted to drugs. The things you're doing or saying might have been okay if this wasn't your history. But because this is your history, you're just going to have to understand you got to rebuild this. And so this idea of rebuilding and restoring things back to life. Again, we go back to the demoniac of Gadara. This guy has been living away from society for so long, and you go and you read the scriptures and all the accounts of this man, is that he goes back into his town and begins to tell everybody about what Jesus did in his life. So he reconnected with society. And I'm sure when he first showed up, people were like, oh, snap, here comes this dude, and everybody run, everybody, don't trust him. He's a demoniac, he's crazy, but clothed in his right mind. That's how I felt when I got out of the rehab. And it wasn't the rehab that did it. It was the rehab that gave me an opportunity to sober up and think. But what I was thinking about was all the things that my pastor and my wife were telling me. I remember my wife, again, coming to our house and telling me, we're going to help you. She actually came and picked me up. Her and her dad came and picked me up. And she actually is the one that packed my bag. She slipped my notebook and my Bible in there. And she was thinking, pictures of her and the kids and stuff. Care, love, concern, and over everything else, patience. And it was on both sides. That's what people were doing for me. And so the reason I'm bringing all this stuff out is because, again, if you're somebody who's either dealing with somebody who's addicted or you yourself are addicted, this idea of surrendering all responsibilities and letting other people tell you what to do is liberating. It's totally liberating. It will make you feel free to grow and to gain and receive help from people who can help and people who can help you know Jesus more. And so I'm telling you, this is like, it's landmark for me, but can be landmark for people who would just let it happen. Like I said, this wasn't easy. None of this was easy. It wasn't like my wife can tell you, there were some, and I won't go into all the details of that, but we had some tough times afterwards. And it wasn't because I was just, flipping out and going in my own direction. It was because of the history I had. And so I had to understand. I had to look at my life and say, I understand why you're reacting the way you're reacting, and I deserve it. But that was liberating. And so what did you tell us about, so after the rehab, what were some of the difficulties we faced? Do you remember any kind of the struggles we had? I mean, you don't have to necessarily talk about how we played them out, but what did you don't have to tell about the fist fights and the cops being called and stuff like that.
Whatever.
But what
just
were
one
some
fist
of the
fight.
But what were some of the issues we had afterwards?
I mean, everything just kind of dialed back, I think, to trust issues. If you didn't come home when you said you were going to come home, immediately I was like, did he leave his phone somewhere? So, he knows there's a tracker on his phone. Like, there was just question all the time. Wondering who you were with, just a lot of questions. I remember some of the issues, like you said, is I would be questioning you about stuff. And sometimes you would get mad at first, like, why are you questioning me? But then that was another thing that showed me, like, okay, he is, this is good. He is changing, is that you were like, I deserve it. Like, you're right. You can ask me anything. I'm an open book, you know. So I think anything that we dealt with, like, was really just like anything that had to do with trust issues, money or people or, yeah.
So did your dad know, like, did he just know what to do when this whole thing was going down? Like,
no. This is the first, he didn't. That's why he reached out for help. He didn't just have a handbook just to say, what do we do? And your son-in-law is, you know, heavily addicted to drugs. We had, lots of prayer, lots of talk with other people, lots of research, lots of stuff went into this.
So another thing I wanted to point out is that this is really the case in working with people, period. You know, it like I said, you know, when you love somebody, you can see this played out in a very good extreme. You have somebody who loves somebody else, who's willing to go the distance. And one of the things I really do appreciate about my pastor is the fact that when he doesn't know something, he really will go and find the answers. And he literally will travail over the answers. He will do what it takes to get the answer, to make the right decision. And again, this wouldn't have happened. I would not be sitting here talking to you right now if, and again, I don't mean for all this to sound cliche, but I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if that didn't happen. If somebody wasn't willing to just go the distance and do whatever it took, work through all the garbage, my wife working through all the garbage, all the heartache and hardship and questions. I remember, some of you probably have this same type of tracker, so you can just kind of see where your spouse or friends are, and you know, there's like this little like a roadmap, you know, around where you've been, and so you can kind of see like point A, and you see point, you know, B and C and D, and wherever you stop. And I remember I like had gotten on the freeway to come home from work and got off the freeway. I can't remember why. I think I had gotten a text or a phone call or something like that. And so I pulled off the road to respond, or I just literally stopped somewhere off the freeway, but it was in Oakland. and so, you know, I drive from Alameda into Oakland. Anybody who knows Oakland knows it's just, you know, it's thuggish. It's, you know, there's drugs, there's gangs, there's violence. It's just a place where people go when they want to be stupid. And so I pulled off into Oakland, stopped, did something. I think I was there for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then got back on the freeway and drove home. And right when I got in the door, I saw you stopped in Oakland. And it was like, yeah, I did. And I was shocked. I was like, what's happening right now? And my wife's eyes were like daggers. And she's reading, and she's trying to find out if I'm lying. And I remember, I'm like, you know, again, this pride thing starts rising. I was like, what are you talking about? You know, are you tripping? Like you're crazy. Like but again, the reminder of my history and what this did to my wife and what this has done to people I knew. It took a long time to rebuild these relationships. And so you cannot be, you know, a person involved in this kind of deliverance if you're a quick quitter. You have to be in it for the long haul. You have to be able to work with people and to work through things from the addict standpoint and from the people working with them standpoint. You have to be able to work with people, be patient with them, and tell them the things they need to hear, but at the same time giving them the opportunity to explain themselves and work through things. And I really do, I can credit my wife to, and you know, my wife's not always the most patient person. You know, we've got 4 kids, and you see our lack of patience play out sometimes, but for the most part, we've been able to develop a level of patience and long suffering with each other, which has made our relationship awesome. And over the last 3.5, almost 4 years, you know, our relationship is awesome. We have fights, we have arguments, but you know what? We have resolutions. There's resolve. There's a companionship. We genuinely love each other and are committed to each other and work through issues with each other. And that's only there because of these, especially because of this situation. And it's not, you know, my point isn't that people need to go through this type of thing in order to have a good relationship. It's that I learned patience. My wife learned a deeper level of patience, and we've been able to now apply that in our marriage. And you know, we trust each other. My wife can pick up my phone at any time and look through my texts and look through my emails, and We have a messaging system at work called Slack, and she can look through any of that stuff. There's nothing withheld. And the problem is that when you live in secret and you have areas of your life that each other don't know about, it makes it really hard to work through problems. And so when problems come up, when you're working with people or, in your marriage and stuff like that, if those problems are in secret, there's no help. And so I really do, I didn't necessarily know if this would go like a full, hour or whatever. I actually wish Pastor Ford was here because we could have asked him some of the questions that, and I was, I kind of played this either way if I had to do this by myself or if with my wife or with my pastor. But being able to hear the perspective of people working with somebody who's going through this was really important tonight. And being able to give credit where credit is due, because I didn't do this. I'm not the one that, I didn't deliver myself. And I didn't make any kind of good decisions other than just saying, yes, I want help. I need help. That's all I did. That was it. And then I just submitted because there was no other hope. And so I really do hope that this helps tonight. And I don't want to, just cut it. My point isn't to just cut it short. But one thing I wanted to point out, as well as another scripture that I was reminded of, is the scripture talking about these 10 lepers. And these 10 lepers are leprosy was a skin-eating disease that, and basically even according to the priesthood and the societies in Jewish culture, they would make these people leave the camp. They could no longer live within the city limits. Again, this is people who are bound by something and who are pushed out into their own culture. They live in their own world. And these 10 lepers come and find Jesus, and they all 10 of them get delivered. And he says, go and show yourself to the priests. And these men all leave, but one of them turns around and comes back to Jesus. And he thanks him. He falls down on his face and begins to thank Jesus. And Jesus looks at him and says, were there not 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? And then he tells this man, get up, go your way. You're healed. And there was something about this transaction that caught my attention when I was thinking about this. And it was the fact that the same thing with the Gadarene demoniac, these men wanted to be around Jesus. That became important to them. It wasn't just, I'm free, I can do what I want now. It was, no, this man, Jesus, did this for me. And they turned around with thankfulness, gratefulness, and a desire for devotion. This man, the Gadarene demoniac, said, I want to go with you wherever you go. And Jesus tells him, no, you need to go to your city and tell others what's happened. This other man, this leper, he turns around and Jesus points it out that these 10 men, I've known a lot of people who have been addicted to drugs and have come into the church and have experienced a level of deliverance, but what ends up happening is they just go their own way. They show themselves, hey, yes, we're free, we're a Christian now. And then they just live their lives like everybody else. But one thing that changed for me more than anything else was that when I met Jesus, I wanted to be right with him. I wanted him. I wanted Jesus. That is what dictated my decisions. That's what helped me through, my own level of shame and the things that I had to bear. Jesus was right there with me the whole time, helping me to make right decisions. I remember Pastor Ford saying, you need to go or he said, you need to just do what I tell you to do. And my pastor doesn't do that. He doesn't tell people what to do. He will give you the options. He will tell you what he thinks is the right decision. He will give you biblical balance to make the right decisions. But what he will never do is tell somebody, do this. But in this specific situation, he said, you need somebody else to tell you what to do. And so he would tell me what to do. And I remember making a decision that I'm just going to do what he tells me to do because God's put him over my life, and I'm going to trust God in that. And there were a lot of times where I didn't necessarily hear God's voice saying, yes, you need to do what Pastor Ford tells you to do. And that was okay. But what began to happen was gradually over time, over the next, actually, honestly, it was pretty quick, within a few months of just doing that, doing what I was told to do and just tucking my head down and just working, just living for God, earning money, doing what I could to help pay off like $30,000+ worth of debt that I had accrued in drug buys. And I just knew that I had met Jesus. And so that was okay. But Pastor Ford would tell me to do things. And I remember there being times where I'm reading my Bible, and I would be like, God, I want you to show me this in Scripture. And this is what a relationship with Jesus begins to look like. I began to open my Bible and would read, I'm reading through the book of John, I'm working my way through the New Testament, and page after page after page, things that Pastor Ford would tell me to do would show up in the Scriptures. And God would like confirm the things he was telling me to do in the Scriptures. And so this wasn't just like me just being like a puppet and a yes man all the time. Jesus Christ was leading my life. He was leading it through other people, but he was confirming it in my own relationship with him. And this is what showed me that what I'd experienced was real and was different, because never in my 30 years in this fellowship and being in the church and in and around people of God, never in that entire 30 years had I ever experienced that kind of personal relationship with Jesus, where all of a sudden I just wanted to be around him. I was thankful for my pastor. I was thankful for my wife. I was grateful for the church that God put me in. And I genuinely wanted to do something for God. That was fresh. That was new. It was something that I'd never experienced before. And this is the result of being able to just surrender and work through the issues and let God do what he wants in your life, listening to other people, allowing your pastor, your headship, somebody else with dominion to lead your life was liberating. And God totally set me free. And how's our relationship today?
It's good.
Is it good?
Yes. I'm very, very thankful, very grateful for all that God's done.
Yes.
And, it's interesting as you were talking about that, like the thing that you asked me earlier, what was one of the things that brought, like when I first started feeling like there's hope for the situation, is that was the other thing, is you had told me, and I remember feeling like, wow, is you told me, how you had that thought, if I lose my job, if I lose everything, if I lose you guys, my wife, my kids, if I lose everything, I deserve that, but I just need Jesus. Like, I don't want to lose Jesus. And that was another key moment in those first days when you got out of the rehab, that I was like, oh wow, like this is hopeful. Like, this is gonna be, a lot more real. And I think it was because if it was more on a physical, like a carnal, like a more, not God focused level, you would be like, please don't leave me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It would have been more emotional and more like physically, like, but the fact that you were willing to admit that you may have burned all your bridges, but as long as you didn't lose Jesus, that's all that mattered to you. Yeah. And I remember that really speaking volumes to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just being careless and saying, go, I don't care. And that's how I was before. and honestly, that's a really, it's like the two extremes. You can either be like, no, don't leave me, and just being totally, beneath everything and everyone, or you can be like you're above everyone. Either way, pride expresses itself in a lot of different ways. And I'll tell you what, this is not, you can't be cookie cutter with it. But the bottom line is, stick it through. For those of you that are hiding things or living in some hidden sin or whatever, open it up. Let God help you. Let people help you. Let someone know, someone who has spiritual dominion, let them help you, and stick it through. For you, those of you that are working with people, being patient, working with people, working through the issues, one thing at a time, one day at a time, one circumstance at a time, seeking God, looking for information, asking your pastor, asking other people that who have gone through this stuff, and seeking help. And honestly, God gets involved, man. This isn't, we're not in this doing it on our own. What happened to the Gadarene demoniac was a total miracle. God got involved in this guy's life and restored him. And so, again, we're not in it alone, and you can't do it alone. And so that's it for tonight. We're going to stop now. Any last quick thoughts?
Nope.
I really do want to invite you guys. We'll be having service tomorrow night before the Thanksgiving holiday. And I want to invite you guys to be a part of what we're doing here and what God's doing in the church. You can come tomorrow at 7 o'clock in person. You can watch us online. We do have our streams. We stream them on YouTube. If you know somebody who's addicted, send this to them. Send this to them. God will speak to them. If you know somebody who's working with somebody who's addicted, send this link to them. Let God help you. You cannot do it alone. but you don't have to be alone. That's the awesome thing about this whole Christian thing, is God gets involved in the lives of people, and he brings you to a different level. And so that's all we have tonight. We will see everybody soon. Check us out online. Find more stuff on YouTube. We have a ton of resource there, and we want to help you. And we'll see everybody later.